You're not adventure riding if you're not getting in trouble. And that trouble sometimes can look like steep, challenging hills like these. With the right technique and training, you can confidently take on just about any hill on your adventure. Welcome to MotoTrek. I'm Jeremy from AltRider, and it's hills like these that can make or break your adventure ride. Stick around. I'm going to teach you the skills and break down the techniques you need to ride confidently up and down these hills with your adventure bike. Here's a great example of a hill in the Northwest that's just common on the BDR. When it comes to us adventure riders, typically we're fully loaded, right? This is something we're seeing on day 3 of our trip. It's not quite a designated dirt bike single track, but it's going to be what you're going to come across stitching together login roads. Today we're going to focus on this hill and how to get your fully loaded adventure bike both up and down. We're going to actually start by talking about ergonomics. Everybody always talks about body position when it comes to hills both down and up. But without the proper ergonomics, you can't get your body into the right body position. So let's jump on the bike and start talking about that. One of the things I see often by either going to the rallies or our signature rides is someone's in a jam and I jump on their bike to give them a hand. That's when I'm really shocked when I find their ergonomics are set up poorly. Whether it's the brake and clutch perch are cocked way too high, the lever's far out from the bars, or that the brake pedal's sitting way too low to be riding off-road. Let's spend some time and set up our ergonomics so that we can make sure that we're in the right body position before we attack this hill, whether up or down. So when it comes to ergonomics, let's start up top. And the first one is the pitch of my clutch and brake perch. If you think about it, guys, too often I get on the bikes and they're angled quite high. But if we're gonna be riding off-road and attacking this hill, you've got to stand up. That's that insurance buffer. We're gonna talk about that in a second. When I go to stand up, you can see how my wrists naturally put my fingers in a downward position. If the levers are up, look at that stress position. Just imagine the entire day as you're riding off-road, stretching and flexing your wrists like that, let alone in this high stress situation in a downhill. We're trying to set everything up as best we can so you have high confidence and reduce your stress as we go attack this hill. And there's not the right position. If there was the right position, Yamaha or BMW would just put them in the right position. And the beauty is it takes us a few seconds, and go explore this in your own garage. Go ride around for that week before your big ride and find out what's the position that you like the best. One of the other missed opportunities is the position of the lever in relationship to the handlebar or the grip. You all know that you need to be 2 fingers or really 1 finger off-road. In order to maximize that efficiency, I want to bring that lever in as close as I can to activate it. If it's all the way extended out, it's a tons of fatigue on my finger. So a lot of the bike models have the ability to adjust the resting position of that lever in relationship to my grip. Bring that in as close as you can to still be functionally viable to reduce the fatigue on your hands. Too often the rear brake is missed for downhills. Because we know that we're going to have very minimal rear braking tire force, it's passed over, but what it becomes is an excellent balance tool. When we're in aggressive downhill situations, we're using a lot of front brake, offloading the rear, and the rear will have a tendency to start to come up on you, and that puts you in a really vulnerable position, right? A high side. When that happens, by just tapping the rear brake, that stops the wheel from rolling. As soon as the wheel stops rolling, it immediately gets right behind that front tire and gets it back in line. It's a really powerful balance tool, especially as your skill sets start to increase in downhills. If you're unaware of it, it's gonna get you in trouble. So let's make sure that we've got the ergonomics set up so that in a downhill situation, I can comfortably and confidently access that rear brake. So when riding off-road, we need that lever in a high position. But of course, then when I get to my liaison, my login roads, I'm in a seated position and I need it in a lower position. The best way to do that is with a brake pedal that's giving you 2 positions, so I don't have to stop and make an adjustment every time I'm going off-road. Now, let's talk about our body position. So when it comes to uphills, there's a lot of dynamics going on. And so I can't just tell you there's one position to be in, which is this forward or this really rear position where I'm fighting for traction. Both the hills are going to change, and even on that same hill, both your speed and momentum are going to change, and the traction environment's going to change on that same hill. When it comes to body position on uphills, we have 2 positions. We have the attack over the bars, and then we got rear traction over the rear tire. In an ideal environment, ideal hill, I'm going to carry my momentum up the hill. That means I want to be over the bars to avoid the front end from lifting and losing traction. That's what's going to put me in a bad situation. So over the bars keeps that front tire planted. as I lose traction on that hill climb, I'm gonna find myself, and I need to be able to read and predict that and start to transition my weight back. It's amazing what happens to the traction when I put my body weight over that rear tire. So that's why I wanna be dynamic and adjusting and moving as I start to make traction. Now, as that traction starts to build and it starts to hook up, I'm gonna need to be reacting again and getting back over the bike as I'm regaining my traction. That's why it's not a set it, forget it situation. Every hill is different and always changing. You need to be a dynamic rider and to be able to react and generate traction or get over the front to plant the front tire. The reason why we're leaned so far over the bars, and it might feel a bit foreign to you, is we're generating and making a lot of traction and we're making our way up that hill. The front end is extremely light and you're losing the ability to steer. I'm way over the handlebars to put weight on the front tire, plant that tire, and ensure that I'm in control. One way to help us understand where to position our body over the front of the bike is, am I having to hang on? Do I feel the load of my body as I'm pulling myself up the hill? If I'm positioned right and I've got that good traction environment, I should be able to get to what is now a neutral position, that even under throttle, my body weight is leaned forward and countering that energy vector, meaning I'm in this neutral position. That's never gonna be static, so it's a nice way to think about how far forward should I be leaning as I'm paying attention to how much am I struggling to hang on to the bike. If I'm in a neutral position and I'm on the throttle climbing up, I can almost relax my arms. I'm not struggling to hold on. And that's what we mean by leaning forward and finding that neutral position as I'm climbing uphill. And that's gonna change throughout the uphill. And so keeping that in the back of your mind of, am I struggling to hold on? Then maybe I can lean a bit forward and find that neutral position. And don't misunderstand that we're saying, let the handlebars float like you're in a sand situation. I'm saying, make sure that you get the fatigue off your arms, but still be very deliberate in the handlebar positioning and where you're steering. Look at the hill. There's probably usually only 1 or 2 clean lines, and you wanna make sure you're getting one of them. If you're struggling to get traction or get momentum or even get started on a hill climb, stop waddling. Don't keep your feet down. You're taking the weight of you off of the bike. In order to make traction, you gotta be on the pegs and you have to have your weight back. So it's gonna happen where you end up with a bobble, you lose traction and momentum, and you come to a stop. This is an advanced technique. There's a lot involved. We're gonna focus on body position, but you'll hear the engine and clutch control. I'm gonna show you the impacts of having the wrong body position and putting your foot down versus the difference of getting my weight back and getting up on the pegs. It's amazing, and I really want you to see that so this starts to resonate and make sense to you. So first, we're gonna demonstrate the wrong way. So you can see how that tire did not want to hook up at all. Now, let's see what happens when we put the weight on the rear tire and I get up on my pegs, and listen to also the engine RPM. Because I'm getting traction right away, it won't climb, and so that's where your clutch modulation is important as well. At the end of a long adventure ride, that's when we tend to get lazy and forget these fundamentals. So practice and make that instinctual so that even after a long day, you're gonna remember good body position. To get up a hill like this, you need momentum. But determining how much momentum is the complicated part. You need to practice and get familiar with your bike, your weight, and hills of different heights so you start to learn how much momentum do I need to make it up that hill. A great way is to start using your speedometer. Was 15 miles an hour enough? How was 20? How was 25? Did I come cresting over the hill? Spending some time on predictable hills helps you start to get a gauge on how much momentum do I need for that hill. When it comes to adventure riding, everybody says you gotta stand up. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But when it comes to this hill climb specifically, I want to focus on the fact that when I stand up while riding, it's giving me almost 4 feet or 3 feet of buffer. And what I mean is it allows the bike to move, whether it's hitting stones or stumps. The bike's able to move underneath of me and not take me with it. That's going to allow the bike to regain traction and ensure that we're going to be able to maintain the momentum for both the hill climb and, just as importantly, for the descent down the hill. When it comes to downhill, it can be terrifying for a lot of us. Essentially, that's when we no longer can see the trail. The thing I see the most is getting lured into the crest, meaning you want to see what's down there, so you ride your bike right up to the edge and then you start to look. But that's a dangerous situation because I no longer can have the ability to get on the pegs before I commit. So make the intelligent decision and always get in the habit of stopping 5 to 7 feet before evaluating the hazard. And if you need to examine the run out, the terrain, the conditions, put your kickstand down and walk to the edge and examine the hill, identify the run outs, assess the challenge. But when you've made the commitment, you now have 5 to 7 feet to get yourself back up on the pegs and in the correct body position before cresting the hill. And once you've crested the hill, we say, stay committed. You're already in it, but stay committed in terms of the body position on the bike. Specifically, don't get off the pegs. It's too often, it's a false sense of comfort or safety to sit down and put your feet down. You are already in a downhill situation on a large adventure bike. You are gonna lose control because you're gonna offload the rear tire and the front tire and lose that critical traction. So once you're committed, stay committed. And by that we mean stay on the pegs. When it comes to downhill, our controls are critical. Number one being the front brake, but really understanding modulation. Unlike going uphill where the clutch modulation is your friend, that front brake modulation is the difference of us sliding and being out of control versus a nice controlled descent. So with good modulation, you can have an incredibly technical downhill in a nice controlled manner. So a lot of riders are afraid or intimidated by their front brake, and that's because of the front wash. You've got to practice in low traction environments and feel that front tire braking. You do not want to come to a technical downhill and not have familiarity and comfort with your front tire braking traction. In this extreme downhill, consistently, I will be braking traction and regaining traction, braking traction and regaining traction. And that has to be instinctive. So practice that on flat ground, begin to practice that more in downhills. You have got to have a high confidence in your front brake to be successful in extreme downhills. Now on the clutch side, rarely am I ever going to be using engine braking, only in a nice, even, non-challenging hill. When it's a challenging downhill like this, if I'm using engine braking, I'm no longer in control of when that rear tire is braking free. So pull the clutch in and use your rear brake to lock up the rear when needed and control the rear tire. When it comes to speed in downhills, if you're unfamiliar with that descent, you want to go as slow as you can while still maintaining balance and control. If you start gaining too much speed, it's very difficult to regain that control and slow the bike down. When it comes to downhill, our body position can be one of our most powerful tools. By getting our body weight back ensures that I'm up on the pegs, I've got the tires weighted, giving me the most traction, but I've also bought myself a 2 or 4 foot insurance buffer. That's allowing the bike to move around underneath of me as I'm doing the downhill. That's preventing me from losing my balance. If I lose my balance and get knocked to the side and I put my feet down, that's the worst situation. I've now offloaded the tires and now I'm gonna lose traction and possibly lose control. One of the critical pieces to success is where you're looking. You've heard of that in cornering and definitely in downhill. When it comes to downhill, I can't emphasize how critical it is, not just for keeping your eyes up, but avoid target fixation. On these extreme downhills, it's easy to get caught up into the obstacles and they're gonna pull you right in. Additionally, you've got to scan the terrain. You got to know where you're going now, but also where are you gonna go to ensure you're set up for success. I would be remiss to not talk about tire pressure when it comes to hill climbs, especially when we're talking about challenging hill climbs. By lowering the tire pressure, you can physically see how a fully inflated tire can't conform to the terrain, but as we air the tire down, it's able to conform. So when I come to a challenging section like this, and I know that I'm gonna respect the riding conditions, I'm gonna air down, meaning if I lower my tire pressure, I'm not gonna go attack that hill really aggressively and hit steep face bumps that possibly will give me a flat or a damaged rim. But what I will do is ride in control and have a large tire contact patch that's gonna give me tremendous traction. Just don't forget at the bottom or the top of your challenge that you air up to a safe tire pressure to continue on your adventure. I'm not gonna tell you what tire pressure to set, but I will share with you that I have dropped my tire pressure to 8 PSI on large displacement bikes multiple times in tough situations. And I did that because that was the only way to get out, and I had an air pump with me, so I was able to air back up after getting through the challenge. So guys, just remember, it's our body position that allows us to stay on the pegs, which is allowing us to maintain traction, which is allowing us to modulate that momentum. Whether you're riding up or down, stay committed and keep your feet on the pegs. Thanks for watching, and hopefully you got something from this. If you want to learn other techniques, please reach out and comment below.